Hi guys. Thought I'd do something interesting tonight. I thought I'd do something interesting today to talk about. Yeah, we need to start checking out on Paramount. Something that many other YouTubers should have looked into doing. Hang on, I'm trying to find something. Yeah, we really got to start checking out everything that's going on at Paramount. Let me get the screen up. Yeah, Paramount was a great company still, but it's quite a shame. Sometimes it's quite a shame that they can't seem to get things right or get their act together, like other companies that it's full of a-holes who are just running plain sabotage. The Transformers movies have had a major problem since Bumblebee, and I'm afraid it will only get worse. Yeah, no kidding. It always does because of how lazy people are in this country buying into shit. Pardon my language if you're anyone's watching this, but I'm just trying to deal with some stress I've been putting up with for months. Ever since the final Michael Bay Transformers film, the timeline of the franchise has gotten more confusing. I always loved watching Transformers animated series as a kid, and I'm still somewhat shocked that Bay managed to successfully create a series of live-action Transformers movies. Say what you will about Bay's Transformers films, but he and his team clearly put a lot of work into each and every movie in the series. All the films that Bay made were extremely successful and turned Transformers into one of Hollywood's biggest franchises. Exactly. Definitely one of their biggest franchises. However, since the franchise seemed like it hasn't had a clear vision since Bay made the last movie in 2017, 2017's Transformers The Last Night, this is disappointing. Since Bumblebee, two, 2018's Bumblebee movie is arguably the best movie in the entire franchise, even though Bumblebee was a fresh entry into the franchise. To this day, I'm still confused as to where it fits in the Transformers timeline. The confusion about the timeline of the Transformers franchise is a major problem and has left sour taste in many mouths since the release of Bumblebee. That's because it's a reboot, guys. Bumblebee marked the beginning of a reboot. It was the start of a reboot, and don't and believe me, yeah, yeah. And it was the start of a reboot. Oh, wow, that was just me. In case you were wondering, the movies continually has been all over the place since Bumblebee. Bumblebee was originally meant to be a prequel to Transformers 2007. Exactly. Yeah, and because of what happened, Bumblebee is set in 1987, 20 years before the events of the first Transformers movie. The film chronicles Bumblebee's early adventures on Earth after being sent to the planet by Optimus Prime during the final days of the Autobot and Decepticon War. Since Bumblebee follows the name after one of the most popular Transformers from Michael Bay's series of films, it was originally announced as a prequel to the first movie. However, this is apparently no longer the case since the series is trying to move away from Bay's films. Yep, it definitely has moved away. And here's where it's set where we are. Transformers 2007 made 709 plus million at the box office worldwide with 57% critic score. Revenge of the Fallen made 836 plus million worldwide in 2009, but with 19% on the score. Dark of the Moon in 2011 made over a billion at the worldwide box office with 35% of a critic score. Age of Extinction made over a billion in 2014, but with 18% critic score. The Last Night uh, made over 600 million at the box office in 2017 with a 16% critic score. Bumblebee made over 407 plus million at the box office in 2018 with and is the highest RT critic score rating in the entire live action movie series with 91%, and Rise of the Beast, the lowest grossing movie of the entire live action Transformers franchise, made over 441 plus million at the box office 2 years ago with a Rotten Tomato critic score 51%. Since it is no longer considered a prequel to the first movie, it is now the first film in the newly rebooted Transformers timeline. However, since it was originally intended to be a prequel, I don't think people will ever view Bumblebee as completely separate from Bay's films. Currently, it seems like some people still consider Bumblebee and the 2023 film of Rise of the Beast to be prequels to Michael Bay's films. However, the series is trying to distance itself from the Bayverse. It is because those are two separate universes. They are reboots. I mean, come on, why drag this on longer? We know it's not they're not prequels to the franchise. They're reboots. I mean, what will it do? Are these people nuts? I mean, telling us they're prequels. Well, what would Optimus say?
You lied to us.
Yep, yep, they lied. It's definitely a reboot. No question about that. Transformers not committing to leave the Bayverse behind has made things confusing. Michael Bay has still been involved in most recent Transformers movies. The new Transformers movies are meant to be separate from Bay's films, and the producers are not doing a good job of changing the style and tone of the movies. It seems like Rise of the Beast was meant to pave a new path forward, but the franchise still doesn't seem like it has fully committed to leaving the Bayverse behind. For example, the designs of Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, and Rise of the Beast look closer to their counterparts in the 2007 Transformers movie than 2018's Bumblebee. Certain plot points from the most recent Transformers movies contradict Bay's films, such as Optimus front of as when Optimus first came to Earth. Choices like this have made me question whether Bumblebee and Rise of the Beast are actually meant to be separate from Bay's films. Obviously, certain plot points from recent movies. Oh wait, didn't I read this? Yeah, our newer movies haven't done enough to differentiate themselves from Bay's films. This is likely because Bay still acted as a producer on both the recent movies. I don't think the next Transformers movie will make the timeline less complicated. And there's a Transformers and GI Joe crossover in development too, which we still haven't had word from yet. God, Why aren't people covering everything that's going on over at Paramount right now? Is it because is everything there already okay, a-okay and secured, or what? Or are we just wasting our time pandering for more viewers and shit? Boy, God, it's not going to be that easy differentiating from the pavers when you can't seem to having much more. You can't seem to have properly planned things out right. Boy, the ending of the Rise of the Beast sets up the G.I. Joe crossover for the next movie. Admittingly, this is very exciting, but I'm still doubtful that the next film in the series will make the timeline any less complicated. It has not been announced when the Transformers G.I. Joe crossover will take place or what characters will be included in the film. However, since Rise of the Beast is set in 1994, I think it's safe to assume it will also take place in the 1990s. Yeah, it's going to have to. Can't go too far past the can't go so far past the. mm, Yeah, you want to make sure you get things some stuff right. Yeah, and clearly with the right set to expire. Transfer, yeah, Transformers' next live-action movie is about to make an old Baver's criticism even worse. Transformers is coming back with another live-action movie, but it should learn from the success and failures of the past and get the best results. If the Transformers franchise truly is supposed to be in a new era, then the next film needs to do serious work to differentiate the style and tone from the Pavers. Overall, I would be much more excited about the Transformers franchise if it felt like it was planned out better. Therefore, future Transformers movies need to clearly establish the timeline of the franchise of what that looks like. Yeah, it does look similar. Yeah, these are the results of what to know about the franchise by far. Let's see if there's more to check out. Okay, let's check out some more. Who owns the Transformers franchise? A complex history of rights and acquisition. Transformers franchise, a beloved and iconic series of animated television shows, live action films, and various other media, has a complex and ever changing ownership landscape. With a history spanning over 3 decades, the franchise has undergone numerous ownership changes and mergers, leading to a complex web of rights and permissions In this article, we will delve into the history of the Transformers franchise and explore who owns this beloved franchise. In the earlier years, Marvel Comics and Sunbow Productions. Transformers franchise originated in 1984 with the debut of the animated television series The Transformers, produced by Sunbow Productions and Marvel Comics. The series was an instant hit, and the characters led by Optimus Prime, Autobot later, and Megatron Decepticon later became household names. In the late 1980s, Hasbro, a leading toy and board game manufacturer, partnered with Takara Tame, a Japanese toy company, to create the Transformers franchise. This joint venture, known as Trolls Inc., was responsible for creating the Transformers toys and characters. Hasbro and Takara Tame shared ownership of the franchise, with each company holding 50% of the rights. Rise of the acronyms Hasbro, Sunbow, and Marvel. 1990s, Hasbro and Takara Toys parted ways, and Hasbro acquired full ownership of the Transformers franchise. Oh, wow. Interesting. So, I can see where the flaws are getting at. I can see what it would explain a lot. Having parted ways must mean the less creativity and the less strategy and less stability and partnership and cooperation and stuff. Oh boy. Sunbow Productions, the original production company, continued to produce new animated series, including Beast Wars and Transformers Beast Wars, but Hasbro took over production rights. Marvel Comics retained the rights to publish Transformers comic books, and the franchise continued to thrive under the Hasbro and, and Marvel partnership. Wow. Disney and the purchase of Marvel. In 2009, Walt Disney Company acquired Marvel Entertainment, the owner of Marvel Comics, for $4.2 billion. This acquisition gave Disney the rights to the Transformers comic book series and led to the creation of a new animated series and films. However, Disney did not retain the ownership of the franchise. Instead, it maintained the rights to publish and license the comic book series. Huh. Paramount Pictures and the live-action films. In early 2000, Paramount acquired the rights to produce live-action Transformers films, which launched with, with the successful 2007 film, The Transformers, directed by Michael Bay. Paramount, in collaboration with Hasbro, has produced 4 subsequent films: Revenge of the Fallen, Dark of the Moon, Age of Extinction, and The Last Night. Paramount owns the rights to produce and distribute these films, with Hasbro retaining the rights to the characters and storylines. Hasbro's continued ownership and revitalization. In the 2010s, Hasbro revitalized the franchise, launching a new animated series, Transformers Prime and Robots in Disguise, partnering with Netflix to produce exclusive content, including the series Transformers Cyberverse. Hasbro also worked with IDW Publishing to publish new comic book series and maintain the franchise's comic book presence. Hasbro remains the primary owner of the Transformers franchise, with Paramount having the rights to produce live-action films and Disney retaining the rights to publish comic books. Wow, quite a mixed bag. Quite a mixed bag. The trans the conclusion. Transformers franchise has undergone significant changes in ownership over the years, with multiple companies playing a role in its development and production. The complex web of rights and permissions has led to a rich history, with each company contributing to the franchise's growth and success. Today, Hasbro remains the primary owner of the franchise, with Paramount and Disney playing significant roles in the franchise's live-action films and comic book series, respectively. Yeah. Wow. That's quite a lot. Wow. Man, that's quite a lot to, to study. I'll be right back. All right. A copyright is the usual right to. Yes. Now, let's talk about copyright. The usual exclusive right to copy, perform, and distribute a work is an original expression of an idea for a limited period of time. The owner of a copyright can be an individual, a group of people, or a corporation. The default owner of the copyright is the creator of the work. However, under the U.S. laws, copyright can be transferred, or if the creator was creating a work within the boundaries of a work for hire contract, belongs to his employer, depending on the exact conditions of the contract. Under U.S. law, copyright is indicated by a simple. Well, this is kind of an issue that we have here. I mean, copyright laws in this country are an issue, especially when you look at DC and how Warner Bros. Has been ruining everything since the early '80s. That they've been so indecent. In the context of the Transformers brand, Hasbro and Takarame are the main copyright holders for the respective markets, and they often even act as representatives of the other ones in the markets. For example, an American who violates the copyright of something that technologically belongs to Takarame will have to deal with Hasbro, who will act on Takaratame's behalf, since most official Transformers related works are specifically created under work for hire contracts. There are very few relevant things Hasbro and or Takara don't hold the copyrights to, and will try to amend that as well. Yeah, exactly. It's precisely a huge issue that we gotta always deal with every day. Okay. A copyright is not the same thing as a trademark. Since copyrights affect original expression ideas, it is generally impossible to copyright a name, term, or slogan. Otherwise, the simple act of copying, i.e., writing it down in a public venue, such as an internet message board, or performing it, i.e., saying it aloud in public, would amount to copyright infringement. Names, terms, and slogans are protected as trademarks, which are only relevant in commercial context. Graphics and logos can be protected as both trademarks and copyrights, depending on whether they are original enough to qualify for copyright protection. Unlike trademark infringement, copyright infringement can be committed by anyone, not just competitors. However, unlike trademark infringement, where the owner has to act as he might otherwise lose his trademark, it is up to the owner of a copyright to decide whether he wants to pursue a particular instance of infringement or not. Compared to other companies, Hasbro and Takarotame have traditionally shown to be very lenient in this regard when it comes to taking legal actions against their own fans. Yeah, yeah, just like Warner Brothers. Copyright history. The concept of intellectual property rights is a relatively new one. During the Middle Ages, nobody would have thought of owning the sole rights to their intellectual work. Stealing a book was was considered a crime, which it still is today, but copying a book and leaving the original with its rightful owner was not. Likewise, any sort of music was considered free, and the developed countries had their own copyright laws or comparable concepts in effect, but those differed widely between the individual countries. In many instances, the creator of a work specifically had to register his work to apply for copyright protection. Co- Copyright protection. Yes. Yeah. It wasn't until 1886 that the Berne Convention for the Protection of Literacy and Artistic Works, commonly referred to as the Berne Convention, held in Bern, Switzerland, established an internationally agreed upon, more or less uniform copyright regulation, and any country that had signed the Berne Convention agreed to respect the copyrights of which works created in other countries that had also signed it. In addition, copyright protection became an automated process that did not require explicit registration. One of the countries that did not sign the Berne Convention until 1980 was the United States. Huh. Now, that could be different. Okay. Which is why works still had to be registered to be protected by copyright there until Congress passed a law in 1976 that made registry unnecessary. Huh. 1976, huh? Really? Could that be why? All right. We'll see, Katie. We'll see. Hopefully you won't keep trying. Hopefully you'll do your part to make sure no one compromises you on that day. Yeah, we'll see. I just don't understand you sometimes of why or who this person you work for really has to gain from being so random with the works. Yeah, registration unnecessary. Sorry about that, guys. God, I shouldn't be talking so loud. Let's get back to this. Yeah, 1976 made registration unnecessary. So registration still comes with additional benefits to this very day. The United States also originally required copy, copyright for a work to be renewed after the original protection term, 28 years, had expired. 28 years. Really? 28 years? Last I counted, it was 95. Yeah. Okay. Otherwise, it would fall into the public domain. This became automated in 1992. That's interesting. The purpose of copyright is to entice people to create works and share them with the world. In return, the creators are granted exclusive rights to decide on any uses and reproduction of their work. Essentially, this is a trade-off. Share your work with the world instead of keeping it to yourself, and you get to decide when and how it is used, published or performed for a public audience, including the right to decide on monetary compensation. Also, part of the trade-off is the idea of the copyright protection expires after a certain period of time, after which the work irre- irrevocably falls into public domain and can therefore be copied, performed, and published by anyone without requiring permission or payment. The length of copyright protection term in the U.S. has been extended several times. One of the com- One of the commonly accused culprits is Disney, who repeatedly lobbied Congress to pass a bill to extend copyright protection whenever Steamboat Willie was in danger of falling into public domain, which it already has. So Sonny Bono, singer turned congressman, also pushed hard for one of these extensions in 1998 after her husband's death. Also quoted that an MPAA president, Jack Valenti, who wanted it to last forever, less one day, which is in stark contrast to the original purpose of copyright, which did intend for the creator for a work and maybe his heirs to benefit from the revenues generated by the work in question, but certainly not multiple generations of descendants. Imagine the works of Shakespeare, Beethoven, and Leonardo da Vinci were still protected by copyright today. Sure, their heirs would probably love their money, but yeah, but indeed. Currently, the U.S. copyright protection for works created in or after 1978 lasts for 70 years after the death of author, work for hire creations. See below for more. Are protected for 120 years after creation or 19 or 95 years after publication, whichever is shorter. The protection for works published or registered in these U.S. before 1978 currently lasts for 95 years, starting with the date of publication, as long as the copyright was renewed during the 28th year following the work's publication. That means Steamboat Willie was protected by copyright until January 1st, 2024. Of course, while this means Mickey as a character is public domain, derives work deri- derivative works need to to adhere to his portrayal in these earliest incarnations as too closely resembling latest versions that are still in that 95-year window risk infringing on copyright, and Disney will let you know it. Other countries have their own copyright protection terms, but in most copyright durations has been extended over the years to either 50 or 70 years after the death of the author. The concept of work for hire does not exist in many jurisdictions. Just to further illustrate how long copyright protections last these days, the song Happy Birthday to You was composed in 1893, originally named Good Morning to All, with the lyrics written in or prior to 1912 and registered for copyright in 1935. Currently, the Warner Music Group claims ownership of the song, which, with its full lyrics, won't fall into the public domain until 2030 in the United States, 2016-17 in the European Union, and Warner still continues to make millions in annual revenue from its use in works such as movies or TV shows. In September 2015, however, a U.S. federal judge ruled that Warner Chappell Music, the subdivision of WMG involved in the copyright issue, actually did not own the copyright to the song, only to a specific piano arrangement of it. This effectively places "Happy Birthday to You" in the public domain. So sing away, everybody. Yep, sing away they did indeed. Wow. Modern copyright basics. Anytime an original work is created that is an expression of one or more ideas, it is automatically protected by copyright. Hell, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's continue. Hang on. Okay. Anytime, anytime original work is created that is an expression of one or more ideas, it is automatically protected by copyright. Ideas themselves cannot Ideas themselves cannot be copyrighted. For example, the basic concept of a robot that converts into something else cannot be copyrighted by itself, neither in terms of toys. Anyone can create and release their own transforming toy robots without necessarily committing copyright infringement nor friction. Anyone who can write and publish. Hang on. Limitation for whether something is specific enough to count as an original work as an original work. Hang on, let me find it. God, I lost track. Limitation for whether something is specific enough to count as an original work covered by copyright or not is known as the threshold of originality. For example, Generation 1 Optimus Prime toys protected by copyright, and the same applies to backstories of Transformers lore and is originally developed by Marvel, alien robots from planet Cybertron. And the specific stories told in comics, cartoons, video games, and movies. What matters are not specific details by themselves taken out of context, but the work as a whole with all its details placed more similar to someone else's work is to these specific works, the more likely that person or party will be found guilty of copyright infringement. The more vague the similarities are, or the more general the idea supposedly copied, the less likely the person or party will be convicted. It's not really possible to quantify similarities in percents, though. Copyright disputes are decided on a case by case basis. You can. The default owner of a copyright is the creator of the work. If, if a work is created as a group effort by several people, they share the copyright to the work or hold the copyright to certain parts of it. For example, if Jim composes a song and Bill writes lyrics to go along with the tune, Jim owns the copyright to the melody, which includes the right to reproduce written notes, whereas Bill owns the copyright to the lyrics, which also includes written reproductions. Let's see here. Jim owns the rights to copy the melody. Let's see. Owns right. Wait, hang it. All right. Let's say if a work is created as a group by effort by several people, they share the copyright to the work or hold the copyright to certain parts. For example, Jim composes a song and Bill writes lyrics to go along with the tune. Jim owns the copyright to the melody, which includes the right to reproduce written notes, whereas Bill owns the copyright to the lyrics, which also includes written reproductions. That means Jim is free to release the song as long as he doesn't use Bill's lyrics, and Bill can use the lyrics as long as he doesn't use them with Jim's music. If they share the workload for one or more steps, they share the copyright and need to reach an agreement when it comes to releasing or licensing their work. It is also possible to create a work under a work for hire contract for a company, which is the default in the American establishment. Creator owned works are the exception rather than the rule. Anything created under the conditions of such a contract is usually copyrighted to the company. When Hasbro assigned Marvel to develop a backstory for the then upcoming new Transformers series, Marvel was working under a work for hire contract for Hasbro, and Marvel's employees were working under a work for hire contract for Marvel. That means any stories, characters, and concepts they create within the boundaries of their contracts were automatically copyrighted to Hasbro, not Marvel or the individual creators. Marvel tried to circumvent that eventuality for a few characters due to a loophole in the contract. However, see below for more details. It is also possible to transfer copyright ownership to a new owner by means of a contract. For example, when Hasbro acquired the license to sell Takara's Diaclone and Microchange toys on the United States market under the name the Transformers, they became the de facto copyright holder to the toys for the U.S. market. All modern jointly created Transformers toys are shared properties of Hasbro and Takara Tame, according to the copyright marketing in the individual toys. Infringement and defending copyrights. Any unauthorized use of a work that that is protected by copyright constitutes copyright infringement and can result in legal prosecutions. A common misconception that is anything that can be found on the internet is free. Any images found on the internet are by default protect are default protected by copyright and therefore cannot legally be copied and republished without permission. Exceptions are the works that are in the public domain, either because of the copyright term has expired, the work has been created by an employee of the United States government and military within the boundaries of the employment. Those are in the public domain by default, or because the creator has deliberately released his work into the public domain, which is irre- irrevocable. There are also specific licenses: Creative Commons, Copyleft, GNU General Public License, etc., which allow individuals to use someone else's work without specific permission as long as conditions of the license are respected, e.g., identifying the creator name, non-commercial use only. However, even though any unauthorized republication of a professional image depicting Optimus Prime con- constitutes a copyright violation, which means pretty much any internet ban is full copyright violations. Yeah, I've been there a lot. Ah, hmm, wow. I might get knocked up next. Okay, let's see. An exception is a concept known as fair use that exists in the United States copyright laws, but is legally unknown in many other countries. Fair use basically constitutes that using a reasonable excerpt of someone else's work, a small scale version of an image, an excerpt from a text, within the context of a new original work does not constitute a copyright violation depending on the context of intended use. Nonprofit informational purposes are a popular reason to invoke fair use. Criticism and parodies of the work itself are also generally covered by fair use. However, the new work in whose context of copyright work is used must contain a certain amount of originality. Simply showing a scene from a movie does not constitute fair use. Showing a scene from a movie and pointing out the filmmaking techniques used in the creation of the scene, commenting commenting on the effect of the scene has on its target audience, or making fun of laws in the scripting, set decoration, performance, and direction of the scene would be more likely to fall under the fair use exemption. Note that fair use is often invoked by internet fans to excuse massive amounts of copyright violations. And the conditions for when fair use applies are actually a lot stricter than commonly assumed. Hasbro and hang on. Hasbro and Takara Tame have long history of being very lenient when it comes to the fans of their brand. Their owners of Asterix are known to be particularly rigid when it comes to defending their intellectual property, especially in Europe, where copyright law is even more rigid than in the United States in many regards, and the concept of fair use is unknown. Compared to that, Hasbro and Kuratame's approach appears to be based on several questions. Is copyright Is the copyright violator acting in bad faith? Does the copyright violator make a profit? Does the copyright violation reasonably cause actual instead of just purely hypothetical damage? Does the damage alleviated by legal means, legal measures outweigh the efforts and expenses for those legal measures? Does the legal measures hurt the public image by appearing as an evil corporation that takes its own customers to court? Note that there is a large leeway for copyright holders into operating. The record and movie industry often prefers to hold their target audience on a short leash, whereas and Hasbro and Takara have opted for their fan-friendly and to the spectrum. Fans occasionally excuse the content of the fan sites that arguably that they, by arguing that they are effectively free advertising for the Transformers brand. However, while this mindset certainly influences Hasbro and Takara actions in this regard, free advertising is by no means a valid legal defense. Tell me about it. Let's see here. Hasbro and Takara are doing so by their own choice and are free to change their approach whenever they want. For example, in the early 2000s, several fan sites were hosting scans of the Generation 1 Marvel comics and encodes of the Sunbow cartoon. Neither were officially being distributed back then, and for whatever reason, Hasbro did not take legal action against those materials being openly offered on the internet for several years. However, with the onset of a general 1980s nostalgia wave and an increasing interest in Transformers in general, Titan started releasing collected editions of the Marvel comics, and Kid Rhino released the cartoon on DVD around the same year time. The owners of these websites had started to ask for donations to cover their bandwidth fees. Whatever the specific reason, Hasbro eventually sent out cease and desist orders, a comparably harmless legal measure. The sites in question complied and removed the content in question, prompting Hasbro to continue tolerating their existence and other comparably minor copyright violations. Knockoffs of Hasbro's toys also constitute copyright violations. This was confirmed in two court cases from 1985, namely Hasbro Bradley Inc. v. Spark. Hang on, guys. Hang on. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. Bradley, there are no records of Hasbro shutting down knockoff operations from the 1990 onwards, as the problem is that the manufacturers of knockoffs are usually located in countries like China and taking legal action against copyright violation in other countries tends to be a lot more expensive than against domestic operations. In addition, despite having finally signed the Berne Convention in 1992, there are still many instances of Chinese authorities not enforcing international copyrights as thoroughly as foreign copyright holders would like them to. Thus, it's easier for Hasbro to go after domestic distributors or simply urge retailers to stop selling knockoffs. They don't even need to threaten legal action. Threatening to stop supplying and the store in question with official Hasbro product can be more than sufficient. Despite this, knockoffs still continue to find their way into American stores. All right. Derivative, derivative works. A more complicated concept are derivative works. Those are now works which are based in part on other works to which the creator of those new works does not hold the copyright. A derivative work is not an outright copyright infringement since it constitutes a new work that contains original expressions of ideas. However, it is not entirely independent work either since, well, elements of the works. In those works are in the if those works are in the public domain, creator of the new work does not have to fear litigation, and his new work is protected by copyright. Simply put, Marcel Duchamp's painting LHOOQ is based on the Mona Lisa, but since the Mona Lisa is already in the public domain, Duchamp All right. Okay. Where did we left off? Oh yeah. Duke Kemp did not. Oh wait. Let me make sure. Okay. Duke Kemp did not encounter any legal problems. Another painting is also based on the Mona Lisa, which could easily coexist with LHOOQ, but another painting is. Yeah. Where did I leave off? Another painting is also based on the Mona Lisa, could easily coexist with LHOOQ, but another painting that is a direct copy of LHOOQ would constitute a copyright infringement under French law, but not under U.S. law, since Duke Kemp's painting has fallen into the public domain there as well. In earlier work, is still protected by copyright. It's possible that copyright holders for for them to take legal action against the creator of their definitive work. Aside from the possibility of financial compensation, they may also prohibit any further distribution of the derivative work. Copyright holder of the earlier work does not, however, gain the sole copyright to the derivative work. Simply put, the creator of the definitive work cannot distribute his work without permission from the copyright holder of the earlier work. The copyright holder of the earlier work cannot distribute the derivative work without permission from its creator either. There are no cut and dry rules for what exactly constitutes derivative work. Generally, any fanfic based on the Transformers universe that usually uses existing characters, settings, and plot elements is a derivative work. A fanfic without about shape-shifting alien robots that does not use any established names and contains only vague references to established Transformers lore would be much harder to kibble and heed resident of Optimus Prime. But it's not based on the. Hmm, hmm. Let me see. Hang on. Settings and plot elements is a derivative work. Fanfic about a shape-shifting alien robot does not use any established names and contains only vague references to the established Transformers lore. Would be much harder to kibble and uh, to judge. Same accounts for fanware. A drawing that depicts Optimus Prime based on his animation model constitutes a derivative work, but a drawing that depicts a red and blue robot with truck, kibble, and a head reminiscence of Optimus Prime, but is not based on pre-existing design, is less certain. Likewise, wait. However, selling fan art for a profit can also result in additional problems if the artwork in question contains any names or logos that are trademarked by Hasbro. Likewise, toy robots that are based on existing Transformers toys and only change some details, such as adding a new and altering some parts, would constitute derivative works, or even playing out copyright infringement, depending on how minor the alterations are. Scratch built toys based on existing characters, but not based on existing toys and either based on designs from comics or cartoons with no toy counterpart, or even entirely made up, would qualify as derivative works because adapting a 2D design into a functional 3D toy constitutes a creative process that qualifies as an original expression of ideas. In Transformers related terms, that means most, if not all, third party toys are either derivative works or flat out copyright violations, depending on their similarities to existing toys, excluding Japanese garage kit toys whose creators acquired a 1-day license from Takara Tome for selling their product at a convention. Likewise, knockoffs are usually copyright violations, as mentioned above, while some are more creative ones might qualify as derivative works. Even customized toys that are sold for profit can consider considered derivative works. In 2011, two Japanese hobbyists were arrested for auctioning a customized Carmen Rider figure, which Bandai holds the copyright to. However, Hasbro and Takara Tame are more lenient in this regard, even though these are rumors that Hasbro will start to go after unlicensed third-party products every few months. Nothing ever comes out of it. Third-party products are openly displayed by various sellers at BotCon in plain sight of Hasbro, and even though some fans insist on asking Hasbro about third-party products at every BotCon panel, how Hasbro have tried their dodge their issue, referring to copyrights in terms of justifying trying to ignore third-party products. However, during the preparations for PodCon 2015, organizer Fun Publications have informed dealers about a general ban on those unlicensed derivative figures, while explicitly insisting fans not to refer to them as third-party products. Likewise, Hasbro and Takara normally do not take legal action against fan fiction or fan art. Very true. Copyright conflicts in the Transformers brand. Even the most creative works in relation to the Transformers brand are created under a work for hire contract or an equivalent arrangement in countries where the concept of work for hire does not exist for either Hasbro or Takara Tome. There are a few instances where copyright to a work, or at least parts of it, is not a sole property of either company. The original work for hire contract between Hasbro and Marvel apparently stated that any character whose first appearance was in a Transformers branded comic automatically became the property of Hasbro, regardless of whether the character was based on an existing toy or not. For that reason, Bob Budiansky had Circuit Breaker appear in Marvel's non-Transformers comic in Secret Wars #2. Cover date September 1985, before her real debut in the Transformers issue 9 cover date October 1985, so Marvel could keep ownership of the character. Curiously enough, Circuit Breaker's human identity, Josie Beller, already debuted in the Transformers issue 5, cover date June 1985, but this property makes more sense to lawyers. Likewise, the story goes that Death's Hand first appeared in a single page strip at high noon text written on a napkin by Simon Furman. With artwork by Brian Hitch that was published in various Marvel UK titles before the character appeared in issue 113 of the Marvel UK Transformers comic, thus granting Marvel ownership of the character and allowing them to give him his own comic entirely independent from Transformers. However, Hitch's signature is dated to 1988, apparently after his earliest work on Transformers, and certainly after Death's Head's debut, and no evidence of a Marvel publication containing the strip of prior to 1988 has ever surfaced, meaning that most likely someone told a little fib to keep the character under contract. Can hardly blame them, yes? More problematic are the GB BlackRock and Neonites from issue 74 through 80 of the Marvel US Transformers comic. Marvel claimed the name Circuit Breaker GB Thunder Punch Raptor. Marvel did, however, believe that they owned the copyright to those characters as Simon tended to rework the Neonites and gave them titled Technoax after the Transformers comic had been canceled. The project the project never actually came to pass, however. GB BlackRock is particularly questionable, as he had first appeared in issue 5 of the Marvel Transformers comic and had not been given that the appearing in the different Marvel title First Treatment, thus making Marvel's claim of the character highly questionable. Despite this, these characters which Marvel claimed ownership have made reprints of any comic they appeared in. Problematic. Titans paperback collection were apparently not affected either due to different copyright laws in the UK or because they had reached agreement with Marvel. However, US state-based publisher IDW reprints entitled such as Generations, Best of UK, and Classic Transformers had to skip any issue of the featured Marvel characters until Hasbro and or IDW reached an agreement with Marvel, possibly in the wake of Hasbro acquiring the license from Marvel Toys in 2006, which allowed them to reprint those issues as well as starting with Classic Transformers Volume 5. Raksha, the creator of BotCon 95 Toys character, maintains that since never went through official Hasbro approval process, Hasbro has no legal claim. The claim is shaky at best due to uh, claim is shaky at best due to derivative works, but Hasbro has yet to pursue the issue. It is unlikely to do so in the future. Such as Night Racer holds rather a unique position. The toy is official, but the character is not. Kinda. Raksha, the creator of the character, subsequently wrote the bio for another Night Racer toy was released as part of fa- Fun Publications Transformers. Presumably thus this time with Hasbro's approval. Well, I'm just gonna stop it there now, folks. Well, I hope you enjoyed the stream, but I gotta save it for other things too. I hope you, I hope you guys learned a lot from this thing, but take care. Bye.